Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was 17 and in my first year of college when this happened. Everyone always told me I looked older than I was, which I thought was cool back then. I had no idea it would almost get me into serious trouble one day. I was living in a dorm about an hour away from my parents' house. It was some afternoon and I had been studying for hours straight. My brain felt like mush, and I desperately needed caffeine to get through my evening classes. There was this gas station just a few blocks from campus that I went to regularly. Nothing fancy, just your typical convenience store with overpriced snacks and energy drinks. I walked in wearing my usual college uniform, jeans, sneakers, and a plain t-shirt. I headed straight for the cooler in the back where they kept the energy drinks. I was debating between getting a regular Red Bull or trying one of those new flavors when I heard someone behind me asking if I had clocked in yet. I kept looking at the drinks, figuring he was talking to someone else. Maybe there was an employee nearby or something. I grabbed a 20-ounce Red Bull and was about to head to the counter when suddenly this guy was standing right in front of me. He had to be at least 50, heavy-set, with graying hair, and this angry expression on his face. He was so close I could smell his coffee breath. I immediately stepped back. This was way too close for comfort, especially from a complete stranger. Then he started yelling at me about what I was doing and telling me to get in the back. He said he didn't pay me to drink their goods on the clock and that I needed to put on my work shirt because they had a dress code. His voice was loud and angry, like I had committed some terrible crime. I had no idea what was happening. This man was yelling at me like I had done something terrible, but I was just a customer trying to buy an energy drink. My hands started shaking a little. I tried to tell him that I thought he was mistaking me for someone else. At least, I think that's what I said. My adrenaline was pumping so hard I could barely hear my own voice over the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. This whole situation felt surreal and scary. I turned around and started walking quickly toward the front door. I just wanted to get out of there. My anxiety was kicking in full force, and I could feel tears starting to form. I hate that about myself. Whenever I get really stressed or scared, I start crying whether I want to or not. I was almost at the door, still clutching the Red Bull in my hand, when I felt someone grab my shoulder hard and yank me backward. He shouted at me to come back, his voice even angrier than before. That's when something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the physical contact, or maybe it was just pure panic, but I suddenly remembered I was holding the Red Bull. Without really thinking about it, I spun around and threw it right at his face as hard as I could. The can hit him square in the forehead with a loud thunk. He let go of me immediately and ducked down, probably more from surprise than pain. I didn't stick around to see if he was okay. I bolted out of that store like my life depended on it. Once I got outside, I stood next to my beat-up Honda Civic, watching the door and trying to figure out what to do. This was back in the early 2000s, and I didn't have a cell phone yet. My parents lived over an hour away, and I had no way to contact them or anyone else for help. I was basically stranded there, not knowing if this crazy man was going to come after me or call the police on me for assault or theft. Then two things happened almost at the same time that changed everything. The store owner came out of the building, and a police car pulled into the parking lot. The cop was probably just stopping by to grab a coffee or something, but his timing couldn't have been better. When the store owner saw the police car, his whole attitude changed completely. He went from angry and aggressive to apologetic and nervous in about 2 seconds. He started rambling about how sorry he was and how this was all a big misunderstanding. He kept begging me not to arrest him, which seemed backwards since he was the one who had attacked me. The police officer looked confused but professional. He asked me what had happened and I told him the whole story, how this man had cornered me, yelled at me, grabbed me, and how I had defended myself with a Red Bull. The officer then asked the store owner if he had put his hands on me. The man admitted that yes, he had, but he kept insisting it was just a misunderstanding. He explained that I looked exactly like his employee and that, from behind, he couldn't tell the difference. He claimed he thought I was trying to steal from him. The officer asked to see the security footage. The store owner kept trying to downplay everything, claiming the cameras didn't show much and that it wasn't that big of a deal. But the officer insisted. The man kept saying that you could barely see anything at that angle and that the lighting wasn't great back there. But when we watched the tape, it was pretty clear what had happened. You could see me shopping normally, then this man approaching me aggressively, me backing away, him following me and grabbing me, and me throwing the drink in self-defense. The police officer called my parents, and when they heard what had happened, they were furious. Not at me, but at this man who had put his hands on their 17-year-old daughter. They drove down immediately and we decided to press assault charges. It turned out this wasn't the first complaint against this guy. The officer mentioned that they had received reports before about him being inappropriate with young female customers. The fact that I was a minor made it even worse for him legally. The whole legal process took several months, but eventually he was found guilty of assault. He lost his business license because of the criminal conviction and ended up serving 4 months in jail. His family had to sell the gas station to pay for legal fees. The strangest part of the whole thing was when I finally met the employee he had mistaken me for. She came to court as a witness, and when I saw her, I understood his confusion completely. We had the same build, the same hair color and length, and we were about the same height. From behind, we probably did look nearly identical, but that still didn't excuse his behavior. If he had just approached me politely and said something like that he thought I was his employee, the whole thing could have been resolved in 30 seconds. Instead, he chose to be aggressive and physical with a teenager, and it cost him everything. I do consulting and travel quite a bit for business, but this trip to Vegas was different. I had lined up meetings with several high-value clients at one of the big casino conventions, and for once my company had actually booked me a decent room at the host casino. The flight was delayed naturally, so I arrived at the casino later than expected. The place was buzzing with convention crowds, slot machine bells, and that distinctive Vegas energy. I made my way through the lobby to check in, dragging my suitcase behind me. The check-in area had those velvet rope barriers set up to manage the lines, and there were about 3 or 4 people ahead of me. I got in line and waited my turn like a normal human being. One by one, people checked in and moved along. Finally, it was my turn. The staff member called for the next guest. I took exactly 1 step forward toward the counter when this woman suddenly darted in front of me from out of nowhere. She had clearly been hovering nearby, waiting for someone else to reach the front so she could cut in line. I stood there for a second, honestly shocked by the audacity. I mean, I've dealt with rude people before, but this was next-level entitled behavior. I politely told her that I was next in line. She didn't even look back at me when she responded, claiming she was in a huge rush and was sure I would understand. Then she just turned to the staff member and started talking about her reservation like nothing had happened. I rolled my eyes and stepped back. Look, I travel enough to know that fighting with entitled people at hotel check-ins usually just makes your day worse. I wasn't in that much of a hurry, and honestly, I hadn't hit my daily limit for dealing with rude people yet. I could wait. But man, this woman was something else. She spent the next 15 minutes at that counter gesticulating wildly, clearly trying to negotiate some kind of upgrade or special deal. I could hear bits and pieces of her conversation. She kept going on about being a platinum member and how surely they could do better than whatever they were offering. She complained about her last day and said the service was completely unacceptable, demanding some kind of compensation. At one point, she even asked if they knew who she was, bragging about spending thousands at the casino every year. The poor check-in guy looked completely frazzled. She was pointing at papers, tapping the counter, and generally being as demanding as possible. Other people in line behind me were getting visibly annoyed, checking their phones and sighing loudly. Finally, after what felt like forever, she seemed satisfied with whatever deal she had bullied her way into getting. She told them that it would have to do, but next time she expected better service from the start. She grabbed her key cards and walked off without so much as a look back at the line of people she'd held up. The check-in staff looked exhausted when he called me forward and apologized for the wait. I told him it wasn't his fault and not to worry about it at all. Here's the thing about me. I always try to be extra nice to service staff. These people deal with entitled jerks all day long, and a little kindness goes a long way. Plus, they're there to help me, so why would I make their job harder? I asked him how his day was going and mentioned that it must be busy with the convention. He said some days were rougher than others, which I could definitely imagine. I told him I appreciated him taking care of me and explained that I was there for the business convention, checking in under my company's corporate account. We went through the normal check-in process. I made small talk, thanked him for his help, and generally tried to be as pleasant as possible. The guy seemed to relax a bit when we talked. About halfway through the process, a manager in a nice suit came out from an office behind the desk. He pulled my check-in guy aside, and they had a quiet conversation for about a minute. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the manager kept looking over at me and nodding. When the staff member came back, he had this weird smile on his face. He told me he had some good news for me. I asked what it was, expecting maybe a drink voucher or complimentary breakfast. You know, the usual small perks they sometimes throw in. He said they were going to go ahead and upgrade my room to a presidential suite at no charge. I literally couldn't speak for a moment. A presidential suite in Vegas. Those rooms go for thousands per night. I asked him if he really said presidential suite. Still not believing it. He confirmed it was right and explained that they considered it their way of apologizing for the wait earlier and thanking me for being so patient and kind. I must have thanked him about 100 times. I was in complete shock. I mean, I've gotten small upgrades before, maybe a slightly larger room or a better view, but this was insane. A bellhop appeared and loaded my luggage onto one of those fancy gold carts. He asked me to follow him and led me through the casino to a special elevator I'd never noticed before. It required a special key card just to access certain floors. He explained that this elevator went directly to the presidential level and that my key card would work for the next 4 nights. He told me the floor had its own concierge, private dining area, and other exclusive amenities. When we got to my floor, he gave me a quick tour of the common areas. There was a private lounge, a business center, and even a small library. Everything was marble and mahogany and crystal chandeliers. He asked if I would like a tour of my room. I told him absolutely, that I would love a tour of my room. The room wasn't a room, it was practically an apartment. We walked through a grand foyer with a crystal chandelier, then into a formal living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the strip. There was a separate dining room with seating for 8, a massive bedroom with a king-size bed that looked like it belonged in a palace, and a bathroom that was bigger than most hotel rooms I'd stayed in. But that wasn't all. There was also a sitting room with a bar, a home office setup complete with conference calling equipment, and even a small kitchen. The whole place was decorated with original artwork and had these ornate furnishings that probably cost more than I make in a year. The bellhop explained that each room had call buttons for my personal attendant. He said someone was available 24 hours a day for anything I might need. Room service, reservations, tickets to shows, transportation. I just had to press the button and someone would take care of it immediately. I told him it was unreal and thanked him over and over. The next morning I was sitting in the living room area going over notes for my first meeting when I heard voices and cleaning sounds coming from somewhere else in the suite. I got up to investigate and found housekeeping staff cleaning the bedroom area. We'd been there for probably 20 minutes without either of us realizing the other was in the suite. That's how big this place was. I spent 4 incredible days in that suite. The meetings went great partly because I was able to host some of them right there in my own dining room. Clients were impressed, which definitely didn't hurt my business prospects. I had access to shows, restaurants, and experiences that would have cost me a fortune otherwise. So in a weird way, I owe that entitled woman a debt of gratitude. I had been working 2 years at state parks when I got laid off from my factory job. The company moved overseas and I needed something stable. My buddy, who worked for the state, told me they were hiring seasonal workers. The pay wasn't amazing, but it came with decent benefits, and I'd be working outside instead of stuck in some stuffy office. I work maintenance, patrol, and help keep the parks running. Think of those guys from Regular Show. We're not full rangers, but we do important work. My two ranger bosses are solid guys who take safety seriously. One moved here from another country and worked his way up through the system. The other is Native American and grew up in this area, so he knows these woods better than anyone. This week was our third week under a fire ban. There was a massive forest fire burning across the state, and you could smell smoke in the air even when it wasn't nearby. The whole situation had everyone on edge. The county fire marshal had been crystal clear. Absolutely no open flames anywhere in the parks. Tourists seem to have the reading comprehension of someone who drinks brake cleaner for fun. Every day we'd have to tell people to put out their illegal fires, and every day we'd get the same arguments and excuses. Both my ranger bosses were out on other assignments that day, but they had me doing fire patrol duty. I was making my rounds through the campground when I caught a whiff of fresh wood smoke. I knew this meant another confrontation. I followed the smell to a campsite where I found an older woman with two small yapping dogs and a husband who was sitting in a lawn chair nursing a beer. Their recreational vehicle wasn't even parked properly in the designated spot, taking up part of the road. I walked up to them and politely told them that we had a fire ban in place and they needed to put their fire out immediately. The woman set down one of her dogs and looked at me like I had just told her the sky was green. She claimed that a ranger had told her it was fine to have the fire. I was genuinely confused because both of my ranger bosses had been absolutely adamant about the fire ban. The native ranger especially had been passionate about it since part of his family's traditional lands were currently burning. I asked her which ranger had given her permission. She described him as a tall white man. Now I knew she was lying. There was no ranger working at our park who matched that description. I explained to her that no ranger fitting that description worked at our park and that the fire ban came from the county fire marshal, not us. The ban was statewide and I was trying to save her from getting a ticket. She immediately got defensive and angry, insisting that a ranger on the coast had given her permission. I patiently explained that this wasn't the coast and that the coastal parks were also under fire bans. I repeated that she needed to put out the fire and that I was genuinely trying to help her avoid a fine. That's when she really lost it and told me to buzz off, calling me nothing but a toilet scrubber. That stung, but it also told me exactly what kind of person I was dealing with. I decided it was time to call in backup. I radioed the ranger who was in charge of our park. He was technically on his day off, but when I explained the situation, he was not happy. This woman had not only lied about getting permission, but had also insulted one of his employees. 20 minutes later, I saw his truck pulling up to the campsite. He had put on his full uniform and badge, and he was all business when he walked up to the fire. He greeted the woman and told her that his employee had asked her to put the fire out. The woman looked at him with complete innocence and claimed that no one had come by to talk to her about any fire. My ranger boss didn't miss a beat. He explained that if she was lying, she was looking at a $5,000 fine and 5 years in jail. He added that he would also have to call the Department of Natural Resources to extinguish the fire, which would result in an additional $5,000 fine. I watched the color drain from her face when the reality of the situation hit her. She was looking at $10,000 in fines and potential jail time, all because she wanted to roast marshmallows. Suddenly, her memory became much clearer. She admitted that, come to think of it, an employee had kind of come by and mentioned something about the fire. She quickly promised they would put it out right away. The ranger nodded, then got back in his truck. He drove back to the station, dropped off his gear, gave me praise for handling the situation properly, and went back to enjoying his day off. The next day, we got a letter. Not just any letter, this was a full-blown complaint that went on for 3 handwritten pages. She called me lazy, stupid, fat, filthy, and overpaid. She insisted that the parks should stop hiring people like me and demanded that I be fired immediately. But here's where the story gets really satisfying. When my ranger boss read that letter, he didn't just file it away, he ran her license plates through the system and flagged her as banned from all state parks. Now, if she tries to enter any park in the state, the system will alert the rangers and she'll get slapped with a trespassing fine. The husband never said a word through any of this, just kept drinking his beer and pretending nothing was happening. I almost felt sorry for him, being married to someone like that. She brought all of this on herself. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.